It's friggin' Star Wars, y'all.
What am I looking at?
Oh yeah, I ran the opening crawl through the old thesaurus. Don't want to get sued, you know.
Okay. Star Battles, Installment 9, The Ascension of Firmament Hiker. The deceased banter! The galaxy has listened to a cryptic transmission, an omen of retribution, in the malevolent speech of the deceased Emperor Palpatine.
Routine Leia Organa commissions hush-hush operatives to collect data, while Rey, the terminal promise of the Jedi, studies for war against the fiendish Primo Fraternity.
This is better. Meanwhile, Cardinal Manager Kylo Ren seethes in pursuit of the spectral Emperor, resolved to sabotage any risk to his jurisdiction. Period. So, James.
Yes, Cady?
This movie that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
You like?
Even after having more than 24 hours to reflect, I'm still not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely things about it that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
There were things about it I really did not like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the worst Star Wars movie ever made. I don't think it's the best. Without really getting into, like, spoilery territory, I can't say too much. I don't think it was everything it could have been, and I think that it will live on as just an, okay, they finished the Skywalker saga. For now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now the park can open up, though, in Disney.
Yes. So what about you, Cady? What did you think of Star Battles, Ascension of the Firmament Hiker?
Yep, that's the thing we saw.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. I mean, I never, like, got super into the Star Wars franchise. Like, I enjoyed it. My dad watched the originals when I was a kid, so therefore I did too.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that I ever, dislike it at all. It was fine. I feel like it probably wasn't a great representation of what a Star Wars movie truly could be, but it was a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not getting too far into the spoileriness of it, much like with movies that are kind of either remakes of or extensions of pre-existing series.
Especially like long pre-existing.
Yeah, it was very fan servicey. More on that later. But I mean, it was good.
But yeah, I should premise this by I am certainly more knowledgeable on Star Wars than Cady is.
I will have a few questions.
There was a while in high school in which I was really into Star Wars. I even was a pretty fervent defender of the prequels because I wanted them to be good, but I've changed. I've grown. I mean, this is probably a dead giveaway that I at least kind of enjoyed Star Wars for a time. So yeah, just Cady is more or less an objective observer here, and I am a little bit more subjective.
That's fair.
So, cards on the table. So I know we haven't really been doing casting lately, and it's proved very fruitful in terms of reducing runtime. But we should probably at least mention that this, like The Force Awakens, was directed and co-written and screenplay by J.J. Abrams. I am not nearly as big a fan of J.J. Abrams' work as Cady here is.
I am.
So I'm gonna open the floor to her if she has anything in particular to say about his direction, or like if there was anything that particularly felt like him. I was very much entrenched in what was going on more than like the art of telling the story. So, any thoughts?
I don't know if I've just become so used to what he's done with like the Star Wars franchise, or if he's like consciously like, I don't want to say like stepped away from like his signatures, like the lens flare thing and everything.
Yeah, I didn't notice a lot of lens flaring. That's one that I would absolutely have caught.
Well, not that really has a place in Star Wars anyway, but I mean, it didn't really feel what.
It's a planet with two suns.
Yeah, but I mean, just random lens flares for no reason that have nothing to do with two suns that are in the sky.
Maybe he's learning that you can't overdo it.
But no,
people would absolutely
nothing. In fact, I kind of forgot until the end where it said J.J. Abrams, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. That makes sense why a specific actor was just randomly in it. It's
been said many times before, J.J. Abrams is a director that mostly sort of, he's known for how his works make you feel more than the actual storytelling. I was never bored in the movie. I was definitely always experiencing it, good or bad. And so that may ring true here. It's a little too early to say how much of the movie people are going to remember after the fact. The rest of the casting, I don't feel I need to dive into it. With the exception of maybe like 2 or 3 new characters that can barely be called characters, because they have like 5 lines between them. all the other characters in the movie we've known for a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of, 42. So, to be fair, they also had a lot going on. They were really trying to wrap this story up, and there were times when you could kind of feel like it was like they were rushing toward it, because some things just get, explained away in a really quick... Yeah.
Yeah, well, not that to jump ahead or anything, but, they jumped around quite a bit, so why shouldn't we just a little?
Yes.
One of my notes explicitly is in the beginning, the pacing was just so crazy and wonky.
It made Thor Ragnarok look
it settles a little bit. I mean, they still jump around, but, the beginning was...
The opening hour of Fellowship of the Ring.
What?
Okay, a spoiler warning.
Yes.
I didn't actually write anything. Just I wrote spoiler warning when I highlighted in green.
You could do like a Star Wars style card transition to say spoiler alert and then back with another one.
Let's do that.
If you want.
Now that we're past the spoiler warning, we can talk a little bit more about spoilers. As we were already saying, the movie asks a lot of the audience just within the first 5 minutes. In terms of just this is the way things are. We may or may not answer your questions. Palpatine is still alive. And I, for one, I was kind of pissed that, at the end of the first teaser trailer, we heard his laugh. And then,
I didn't see the trailer.
I know. And then in one of the the later trailer, we hear him, Ian McDiarmid, speaking lines that have not appeared in any of the other movies before. So it was starting to become pretty clear that he was probably going to appear in this movie, and everyone seemed to be assuming that he was in the movie, but I personally believe that maybe he would just show up as an entity or an essence of the dark side or something. And then in the weeks leading up to the release, I started seeing news headlines about, why Palpatine is in the movie and how he does stuff and things. And I'm like, well, they're totally going to ruin that surprise. And then they mention it in the opening crawl. And then you're like, oh, well, that's just a broadcast. And then he shows up in the first 3 minutes, and you're like, oh, okay.
So my first note is I feel like this would make more sense if I'd rewatched stuff with Palpatine, because that my last memory was that he was dead. So I was like,
it does not at all.
Okay,
and they don't explain it
I feel better.
in the movie at all.
But yeah,
the last we saw of him, he was being thrown down, I don't even know what technically, it was basically just a giant chasm in the Death Star that then blew up minutes later.
But we didn't see it, so it didn't count.
No, we saw the Death Star explode.
But we didn't see
him hit anything.
It's not like we saw him burn up or melt.
So there are so many questions, all of which...
Off of the building while on fire.
So there are tons of possible explanations, but you will not get any of them in this film. And I feel like they could have given more. They basically they explain away Snoke. They're like, oh yeah, I'm responsible for Snoke. And Kylo Ren shows up on this Sith planet, which we'll talk more about later. And he basically just walks in, and Palpatine's like, oh yeah, I'm here, and also I made Snoke. And then he walks by this tub of Snoke clones or something, and no explanation there.
He said it, he did.
Kylo doesn't ask any questions.
He's
just like, okay, why shouldn't I kill you? And he's like, because I can give you whatever you want. And then, boom, on to the rest of the movie.
My notes before the pacing note were mostly about the cool things, how things were really cool looking. Specifically during that scene, there was that lightning effect while he was talking, where the lightning would flash behind him, and his face was 2 different directions each time. It was really cool looking. I'm sure to signify, the fact that he's lying through his teeth the whole time he's talking and has ulterior motives and all that, but it looked pretty
Which
cool.
you'd think, Kylo, as a fellow proprietor of the dark side, would be able to see right through, and maybe he did.
Well...
He seemed like he was trying to use Palpatine.
Yeah. Well, and jumping ahead a little bit, not specifically, but there's a character later where it has that same lightning instance, and, that two-face thing doesn't happen. So it was obviously, purposeful.
I was too busy trying to absorb information to notice things like that.
Yeah.
At
that point,
this is why it's good that we watch together.
Well, yeah, but at that point, too, I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'll just let it wash over me, and maybe it'll make sense eventually.
See what sticks. I do want to point out at this point that, as it's mentioned in the opening crawl, and sort of evident, there's a lot of backpedaling of Rian Johnson's work in the last movie in this movie, and we will definitely talk more about that later, but one thing that they sort of maintained, at least a little bit, was that by the end of the last movie, Kylo Ren didn't really seem to care all that much about light side or dark side anymore. He was all about, he just wanted to destroy the past, and he was pissed that he wanted to destroy everything. So I appreciate the fact that they mention that in the opening crawl, and he goes to see Palpatine, and he's like, why shouldn't I just destroy you right now? The only reason he seems to agree to work for Palpatine is because he thinks he can use him for his own ends. So, I don't know.
to ultimately, like, team up with Rey as he wanted to do and what have you. My next note is, light speed skipping. Was that a thing? I don't remember.
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
In terms of principle, I think we all know what he meant by that. We saw it happen. I wrote that, yeah, it's exciting, but let me see, I broke it down into 3 points here. I've always gotten the impression that in Star Wars, the jumping to light speed process is not all that precise. That's why they always jump into space. Jumping out of, like, say, a hangar bay is one thing, but jumping back in, you're moving at light speed. Whatever. They jump from, I believe, from one planet to another planet to another planet to another planet. Even if the precision is all up there, those planets are all, rotating and revolving in a galaxy far, far away that is presumably spinning in some fashion.
Well, one of them was even, like, in the middle of, like a chasm or whatever.
Yeah, and there were, like spires and everything, and they're just like, nope, why not just jump through space? I mean, even just from statistically, the odds of them hitting 3 planets in a row, pretty low, since the vast majority of the universe is empty space. So obviously they were doing it deliberately to lose the TIE fighters that were chasing them, right?
Yeah.
Even if we accept that as logical, which I'm not saying that I do, they should have died all of the times. There is no it would be one thing maybe if a Jedi was piloting the ship, or a Force-sensitive person at all.
Listen,
but I don't care how good of a pilot you are.
Poe's a real good pilot, okay?
They should have crashed
good. Well, and
all of the times.
That was the biggest one, but there were, like, a couple other moments too where I was like, am I forgetting a thing that they talked about before? Okay.
This brings me sort of back to JJ again, because that scene was exciting, but it didn't make a lot of sense. Speaking of backpedaling, Rey has Luke's saber. The saber that was torn in half in the last movie. Remember? It was like, it was after he betrays Snoke, and they're fighting the Imperial Guard or whatever in the red suits and all that crap. And then she goes for the saber, and he goes for the saber, and there's, like, the scene where they're doing this, and the saber's, like, right between them, and you always wonder, like, both of you are, like, 6 inches away. Couldn't you just reach out and grab it?
That's not the point.
I know, but then and they're doing that, and then, like, it gets pulled in half, and there's an explosion, and both of them go flying. When they cut back after that explosion, Rey is gone. So, technically, there's no reason that she couldn't have collected because it only broke in half. We all remember it being more dramatic because there is an explosion, but you can clearly see it go ksh. So she could have just picked up both pieces and brought them with her. But again, there's no reason she couldn't have had a new lightsaber.
So then, Luke's lightsaber is green, yes?
No, the one that we're talking about here is Luke's first lightsaber, which was actually Anakin's lightsaber. It's blue.
Oh, alright.
Yeah.
Well, because there was an instance later where there was, like, that, it was a flashback of sorts, and it showed he had a lightsaber, and Leia had a lightsaber. And one was blue and one was green. And then Rey had two...
Well, yes, and Leia apparently has a lightsaber. That's revealed in this movie, because she did undergo the Jedi training, which would have been nice to have been explained before that weird scene in the last movie.
Yeah, well, but oh yeah, that too.
Because it seemed really jarring if you weren't prepared for it. If we'd known that she'd trained with Luke after the fact.
Yeah, so then jumping ahead then, those two lightsabers I assumed were the ones that were used later in the movie when Rey had both of them. But both of them were blue.
Both of them were blue.
Yeah, one of them wasn't green, because I had the thought and I wrote it down. Shouldn't one of them be green because of that flashback? But I guess if they were different lightsabers...
Yes, no, because the one that Luke probably would have been using in that flashback would have been his second lightsaber.
Never mind then.
I'd have to watch it again to make sure that the details are right, because that saber looks totally different from this saber.
Just as someone who wasn't aware of that and was essentially just watching it for the first time, the fact that they would intentionally show a green and a blue one in a flashback...
That seems like a detail that they would not mess up.
And then say later, oh, this is Luke and Leia's things, and they were both blue, but that's fine.
I mean, I only bring it up because, like I said, there's many possible explanations, especially if you go back and rewatch and see that it was only pulled in half, but it's one of the tiny, like, we know Ryan worked hard on his movie, but I didn't want any of that stuff to happen.
Can lightsabers be repaired?
Oh yes, absolutely. But the point, okay, this lightsaber. Let's be fair here. Anakin had it. Obi-Wan walked away with it after the battle on Mustafar when Annie turned. He gave it to Luke at the beginning of the first movie. Luke lost it when his hand got cut off on Cloud City in the second movie. After that, Luke gets a new lightsaber. That lightsaber is missing. Nobody knows what happened to it. It fell into a chasm over a gigantic gas giant, so who knows where the hell that thing ended up. We don't hear about it until suddenly we find it in Maz Kanata's chest in her cantina in The Force Awakens. After that, Rey takes it to Luke. Luke does one of these. Then we see it destroyed in the same movie, and now it's just suddenly back. It just seems like, why is everyone so hung up on this? Jedis are supposed to build their own lightsabers anyway. Why didn't they make Rey do it? I'm going to rant a lot in this. Because apparently I care a lot more about Star Wars than I thought I did.
Well, and this is a note I had later, too, but since we're talking about the weird things that Jedis, do or don't do with their lightsabers and everything and their abilities, Luke shows up again.
Oh, yeah.
And
Force Ghost.
Force Ghost.
I don't think anyone didn't think that was going to happen.
No, and then full on as a ghost pulls the X-wing out of a marsh thing again. Did dead Jedis are they just as powerful as living Jedis? Is there no limit to what they're just
that one I'm kind of okay with, if only because we don't. The fact that they can come back at all, they're basically manifestations of the living Force. So there's no reason they couldn't theoretically do it. Because really, the Force is all things. I can accept that. What really bothers me is that X-Wing has been sitting in salt water for the last 30 years, or whatever, and he just pulls it out and it runs fine, and then she goes and parks it on a planet that's literally being destroyed by hundreds of, Star Destroyers, and then flies away in it at the end. Did she park it in a garage or something?
It's weird that seemed like the most powerful thing I've seen, one of the Ghost Jedis do, but...
Well, and to be fair, before this movie,
yeah,
we really haven't ever seen them do anything other than just show up and espouse wisdom.
But
actually, that's not true. Yoda set fire to the tree in the last movie.
Sure, that's true.
He conjured lightning to set fire to the tree.
But then why not...
Or at least
why
that's how it
can't
works.
all the ghosts just go and help her?
Well, they kind of did.
Yeah, but
And to be honest, we're not alone in the house, as has been known to happen in the past, so people are creaking around upstairs. To be honest, why didn't the Eagles help? We don't know how it works, so we can't say exactly. She went back to the place where he was when he died. Who knows?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true.
To be fair, we saw the Force used in a lot of new ways in this movie.
You could just say that he's haunting the island and he can't leave it because he's tied to it. I would accept that.
The point is, the Force is an all-powerful, Force in this universe, and to be fair, we see, and there are plenty of examples in this movie alone in which we realize that the Jedi 30 years ago or 50 years ago or whatever didn't know what the hell they were doing, because it's used in a bunch of new ways, all of which could have been useful in, say, a big battle against clones or something, or droids or whatever.
Silly.
But mostly the Jedi back then just used it to push and pull things and occasionally run really fast and jump around and have sword fights.
Float rocks in the air.
And occasionally, make people pick up their dry cleaning or whatever. Since we're on that, we see, basically there's teleportation. You remember when Kylo grabs her necklace? They're having one of their little, chats.
They did that in the other movie, though.
Only a little bit.
Yeah, but still.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it's like they alluded to it in the last movie, where they were having a conversation. It was raining or something wherever Rey was, and then he got water on his face. And in this one, he straight up they're still connected, which I'm really happy about, because it was by far the most interesting aspect of the last movie. Basically, he's trying to find out where Leia is, I think, and she's wearing some coordinate or something. I don't know. He grabs Rey's necklace and takes it, and then turns around and hands it to somebody else where he is. So that's something we've never really seen the Force do outside of the allusions to it in the last movie. And then we also see Force healing, which I'm not sure I've ever witnessed before, except for in this week's Mandalorian, which I watched the day after this movie came out.
That's another note I had. Could she heal before? And then I was like, oh, Force energy, I guess.
There's no logical reason that it couldn't be used to do that. We know that people can manipulate the midichlorians to create life, so why wouldn't you be able to? That's how Darth Vader was created.
There's your Chekhov's thing, not the thing before, but Chekhov's
Force healing?
Yeah, Chekhov's Force healing.
You're not wrong. And that was one of the instances that I absolutely called. It's as soon as she died, I was like, well, that's going to happen, and he's going to die.
Well, she healed him on the thing, and I was like, there you go. While they were talking, in their little space thing, when he grabbed her necklace.
Yeah, the link, yeah.
I just a cool shot, and I think it happens quite often with them when they're, doing that, talk or whatever. She's always in darkness, her surroundings are very dark.
Well, she's light, but he's, yeah.
He was literally in a white room. Yeah. It's so cool looking.
Yeah, like I said, it easily, not just from a storytelling standpoint, but also, it was always shot really, really interestingly in the last movie, and it continues in this movie. And to be honest, I would have been perfectly happy with there being more and more of it, and less silly stuff. There was this moment early on. I mentioned the pacing already.
Yeah.
But in the first 10 minutes of that movie, we go from Kylo going, oh, Palpatine's still alive. Okay, Finn and Poe are defying the laws of physics to get contact information. And then Rey is training in a jungle with Leia. And then they come back and everyone's like, oh yeah, by the way, Palpatine's still alive. And everyone's like, okay, we gotta go figure that out. No one's like, what, how? But anyway.
Maybe they knew on some level.
As they're going to hop on the ship to do that, Rey's like, I have to go. You know, she's kind of insistent on doing it herself because, you know, she doesn't want to get her friends hurt or whatever. And then there's that moment where, like, Poe and Finn and Rey and C-3PO and R2-D2 and BB-8, but nobody cares, are just, like, standing outside the ship and there's, like, this shot and they're like, we're your friends, we're coming with you. And it occurred to me that that's, like, the first time, these are supposed to be, like, the new core. These are supposed to be, like, the new Han, Leia, C-3PO, R2-D2. And Luke, this is the first time that we've really seen them all together, and it almost felt like a hey guys, we're doing it finally. We probably should have done it like 2 movies ago, but sorry.
Yeah, because they're always like off, like crossing paths and not.
Poe didn't even meet Rey until the last scene of the last movie.
That's true.
You heard a lot about her, but they were never in the same room together. And even this movie didn't open. They were off doing different things, and then they're like, no, I have to go. And he's like, I am your friend, apparently. Finn. Yeah, well, Finn says I'm your friend. Let's go.
Even the moments when they were all together briefly, Rey and Poe, like, do not get along. Well, they do, but they argue quite a lot. It's hilarious.
And to be honest, because I was thinking about this, and I was like, the first Star Wars movie was this core group of characters, and they were traveling on a ship, and they were friends, and they were doing Chewie. I forgot Chewie earlier. Sorry. And they were on the Millennium Falcon, and they're traveling, and they go to these different destinations, and they fight through it together. And later on in the series, they sort of fragment a little bit, and people go to different places and things, and that's fine. But it was just, they kind of did everything backwards here, and it was just kind of a weird moment to, like, realize that here we are at the end, and suddenly...
Yeah.
But speaking of Leia, I don't want to sound insensitive bringing it up, because Carrie Fisher was a swell lady, absolutely essential to this franchise, also just seemingly a really cool person. And unfortunately, she is no longer with us, but there were moments when I absolutely felt sort of her absence in this movie. What they did with the archive footage was relatively seamless. Like, at no point was I like, that looks like a dead person. But you could sort of tell that there are certain choices that they made that they might have made differently if they had her there to do things. There's a lot of reverse shot when people are talking to her. Even, like, larger plot elements. Because it's been said in the past that this movie was supposed to be Carrie's movie in the same way that the last movie was Mark's movie and the movie before was Harrison's movie. Sort of paying service to these 3 core characters from the original franchise. And unfortunately she passed away before they could do that. But, like, the way that... When Kylo Ren, spoilers, Kylo Ren sort of turns back to the light side, or if you want to call them sides anymore, he has a change of heart. The moment that it really seems to cement itself is when his mother sort of reaches out to him with the Force and then just kind of dies. And I feel like that was going to be a much corer part of his journey, and because of the limitations presented by Carrie Fisher's absence, they couldn't do everything they wanted to do. I don't want to blame anyone for this because, I mean, it was an impossible situation to handle elegantly. So I think they did a fine enough job, but I felt like it needed to be brought up.
I feel like that in that moment, it wasn't just that his journey changed, it's Kylo died.
Yes, well, that's a running theme in Star Wars.
But when Rey stabs him, she kills Kylo and heals Ben.
That's a good point. Didn't even think of that.
Yep, because then from then on...
And then they literally say it, like, the next scene.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
No, Ben's not dead, Kylo's dead. Well, but who was dead before? Was Ben dead, and now he's back at... What?
Ben dead. But yeah, I wrote it down as, she healed, or killed Kylo and healed Ben, and I did a surprised face, because what a shock.
But see, I mean, I get what you're saying, and like I said, it's a running theme in Star Wars. It's like, oh no, Darth Vader did kill your father, because the man that Anakin used to be is gone. And it's like, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, that argument wears a little thin when we're talking about people who go around murdering children and blowing up planets and things like that.
Right.
Because it's like, oh no, he's a different person now, so his past doesn't matter.
Oh no, it matters. It's...
Well, I'm not saying your argument is wearing thin. I'm saying that Star Wars' argument is wearing a little bit thin. It's great when they have a change of heart and they do something good at the time, but one hand washes the other. It doesn't make them a good person. So I was actually not unhappy with Ren's / Ben's arc. in this movie.
That's, like, genuinely all I really cared about.
In fact, if I'm being honest, and I've had a couple of days to think about this, and technically like 5 years since Force Awakens came out, but really just since the last movie, because in the first movie it was very, par for the course. Not really a huge connection between the two, but they really started exploring in the last movie. The strongest part of this whole thing is not just the scenes and their Force link. It's Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley's chemistry on screen. They really play well off of each other. If that's one of the few things about this movie, and I guess the movie before, that I actually genuinely like.
I would agree. That's like that story was not that it's the only reason that I was like, okay, fine, I'll go see it because I want to see what's going to happen. But I mean, since that last movie when they started building it, that was the most interesting part of it.
The Knights of Ren are in this movie. Remember the Knights of Ren? They were mentioned in The Force Awakens, and then they were mentioned again in The Last Jedi, and then they were like, hey, the Knights of Ren are finally going to be in this movie. They are. That's technically not a lie. They do nothing. They have no lines. They have a couple of fights. The fights that they had could have been performed by literally any other bad character.
Literally any other character.
I was actually kind of excited because I've always wanted to know more about them. They're not named. They just show up and they're there and they never say where they've been for the last 2 movies. Or they don't have lightsabers. They just have like electro weapons or vibro weapons or whatever the Star Wars answer to that. The point is, if you're hoping to learn more about the Knights of Ren, don't get those up.
The hopes. Don't get the hopes.
More just sort of like covering things that kind of need to be covered in the Star Wars universe. Star Wars talk. Movie introduces a number of new planets. We got Pisana. It's the new desert planet. Obviously, it didn't need another desert planet, but they went and there was like this festival going on, and it's sort of really everything that happened on that planet I kind of enjoyed because like they went to that, and like the festival setting was something that we haven't really seen much in the franchise before now, if at all, except in like big show-stopping ending scenes. But it was just like the local culture who happened to be celebrating a festival that day, and then they went and found this cave, and everything felt very Indiana Jones. That scene, like, if I'm being honest, while I enjoyed the time on that planet, what did it do for the movie, really? I don't know. We also had Kijimi, the place where we met one of the superfluous characters. Kerry Russell, though you'd never know because she never takes a helmet off, plays Easy Rider or something. I know I wrote it down. Zori Bliss. What a great, smart name. We barely see that planet at all, but it's almost like Dickensian. It feels like a Christmas Carol because it's like a relatively small like town, but very compact, and there's snow and everything. And like the moment I was like, but they're there for a few seconds, long enough to be like, oh yeah, can you fix our droid or unfix our droid or whatever? It could have taken place anywhere. It was a whatever the location based version of a MacGuffin is. Probably just a MacGuffin. MacGuffinburg. And then they went to Kefbir, which I guess is another moon of Endor, which is an ocean planet, because I guess Endor couldn't possibly have an ocean on it because it's all forest. The forest moon could. Endor is also the name of the planet. It's a whole mess. The point is, apparently Endor has another moon. That's where the Death Star 2 crashed. Hell, we all saw it in the trailers, except Cady. First of all, the Death Star is much smaller than it probably should be. We saw it relative.
It did feel pretty small.
It felt small.
Yeah.
Like, really small. I mean, the whole thing wasn't intact, obviously, but we got a sense of scale because we could see at least part of the nipple. So, you know what I'm talking about. Again, it could have been anywhere. They needed the ocean, and that's fine. Like, I like the atmospheric property, and then they had a cool lightsaber fight in the ocean, but it was just like, once again, we get there and we meet another character who also has a name, though you'd never guess it. Jana.
Who? Oh.
Yes, the other ex-stormtrooper with the horses.
That whole sequence, like, on that planet and everything, too, and, like, when they got to the whatever, with the scavenger chick that you just mentioned. I don't remember the name of the planet.
Smuggler.
Smuggler, whatever.
Kerry Russell.
It was
all
like,
we need to know.
Within that, like, those couple of scenes, there was, like, I wrote down, oh, look, a cantina scene. Oh, look, they sneak onto a ship and have to
It was like they were checking off boxes
with bad
on the
guys,
list.
I wrote check. And then the next one was climbing in the Death Star. It feels like when we first were introduced to Rey, and she was a scavenger climbing through the thing. It was literally.
Yes, I did actually appreciate that because it sort of like brought it back around because we didn't see her climb or anything in the last movie.
It was just like it was a lot of like, again, as I sort of mentioned earlier, like not in a bad way, but fan service.
It was very
like
rote.
A nod.
But if I'm being honest, all of these locations, while it's cool to see them, though some of them I didn't see as much of as I'd like to, they're more just like, oh, we're in a new location, so we can do this thing, and then they introduce these other elements so that the characters that aren't Rey will have something to do. I mean, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say, I think Finn was a mistake. After the first movie, he did nothing. He has not done anything useful. I hate to admit it. Like, I have no problem with John Boyega. It's not his fault, but it's like, he wasn't that interesting in the first movie. And then the second movie...
He and that other ex-Stormtrooper lady, they kind of set that up to do a whole possible spin-off of finding them a place to, like, live or, like, where they came from and all of that.
Yeah... But in this movie, other Stormtrooper lady and Kerry Russell were just like, oh, well, Rey has Adam Driver. Apparently, these guys need random love interests that otherwise have no personality or reason to exist. But they've said that, like, we're going to take a little break because apparently we kind of lost control of this whole thing.
But it's set up for when they come back.
I'm
just saying, that's probably what they might do.
It didn't help this film.
No, not at all.
So... I'm not done with planets. There's one more.
Planets.
One more very important planet. Exegol. It's an old Sith planet covered in black rocks and black clouds and a big black spire and apparently 100 million Star Destroyers that are just there.
They were just chilling.
Because I guess the Force can also make Star Destroyers.
Like I said, is there no limit to the dead...
Apparently not.
...powered things?
The place is an even more wretched hive of scum and villainy than Mos Eisley Spaceport. I understand why the planet exists, and like they needed like a big epic, like, this planet is evil place to have the final showdown and explain everything that's ever gone wrong in the universe, apparently. But could they have come up with a less stupid-sounding name, maybe? Something that doesn't sound like a frozen hard-boiled egg on a stick?
No.
That's the thing. The way it's written is Exegol. Just say it a little bit differently, but every time someone says the name, they say Exegol. It's Exegol. You know, that big, bad, horrible planet that was the home to the worst people in the universe. Exegol.
I've talked about the rest of mine except for one thing, which I don't know if I want to mention.
Okay, well, I'm gonna rapid fire here. Feel free to interject.
Hold on, let me get ready.
So when Rey straight up murders Chewie, even though she doesn't actually do that. She blows up the ship that she thinks he's on, and first of all, why is nobody terrified of Rey after that? I feel like it could have added a new dynamic that would have made it more interesting if Poe and Finn at least had a conversation about, like, she's getting really powerful and dangerous, and we love her, but she doesn't know how to handle it. We need to be on guard here.
I feel like Poe at least would have, because there was that moment earlier.
Finn is clearly blindly devoted to Rey, so it's...
There was the moment earlier before they, like, initially left where she was like, I have to train, and he was like, no, you don't, you have to come with us, bro, Poe. So, like, I feel like that at least would have, like, come up again.
Yeah, you'd think he would have been like, she did need to train. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Oh yeah, evil Rey. Remember when she was in the trailer and everyone was like, hey, evil Rey and her Swiss Army saber.
Yep.
She was in it for 3 seconds. Like, I get what they were going for here. It was supposed to be like the Dark Side Cave on Dagobah.
And it was for a second, because she had, like, a weird, like,
and I know that for
weird thing.
And I know that for a lot of people, even, especially when the movie first came out, that particular scene was kind of, like, confusing and a little jarring. Obviously, people have gotten used to it, and it's part of it now, and the symbolism is very clear. Here, it was not as clear, and it was very short, and it was just, you thought that first one was jarring and confusing. What? And it wouldn't bother me so much, except they put it in the trailer like it was some big... Just leave it out.
I didn't see the trailer.
Marvel Studios has no problem putting crap in that's not in the movie at all.
I didn't see the trailer, and I didn't purposely stay away from stuff, but I didn't see anything, and I even saw, like, that, like, little clip of Evil Rey, and I was like, sure.
It was dumb, and I don't... Again, I get what they were going for, but just, like, it seemed excessive. I brought up the backpedaling thing, and some of it wasn't even necessarily backpedaling, it was more like just, like, really simple explanations for things that they didn't feel like explaining better from the last movie. Rey's parentage is addressed, and it's not what they said in the last movie. And they sort of weasel their way around it. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Good, because I'm not sure what you mean by that.
In the last movie, Kylo Ren tells Rey that her parents were junk traders who just gave her away for, like, beer money.
Oh, okay. Well, he didn't really know it.
No, I know. Again, their explanation was fine. It was still clearly Rian Johnson wouldn't have done that if he... Because Rian Johnson set out to just be like, stop thinking about the past. And he overdid it, don't get me wrong, but I do at least respect that he was trying to, like, move the series forward. And he went nuts with the twists and, like, all this other stuff. But the point is, Rey's parentage is addressed, and it's not what Rian Johnson said it was. Luke's fall from grace, obviously they built off of the fact that he sort of had his doubts, and that whole thing happened with Kylo Ren, but it just seemed like if J.J. Abrams had been in charge from the beginning to now, it would not have happened that way. And Snoke's significance, I already brought up Snoke. Like, everyone wondered who he was, and then he died unceremoniously, and then it's just, oh, Palpatine made him. In, like, a lab with his bioengineering degree that he got at University of Phoenix. So we've been putting it off for long enough. I just mentioned Rey's parentage being addressed. You want to say? I'll let you say.
I was just going to say...
I can't without, like,
sit down.
Throwing up.
It's crazy. Palpatine is her grandfather.
First of all, when Star Wars 2, or 5, however you want to look at it, Empire, the best one.
Yeah.
When that movie came out, and everyone was like, oh my god, Luke is Darth Vader's son. Nobody in the audience was like, well, I guess that means everybody has to be related now.
Weren't they?
No. The first one was a great twist. Leia in the next movie? It's okay, it's acceptable. The point is, not everybody in this whole goddamn galaxy has to be related. And now, there's just so many... I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying, A, it didn't need to happen. She could have been a virgin in the Force. Maybe she was a virgin in the Force that was manipulated by Palpatine.
I was kind of hoping the whole time that she would just have been, like, a random person.
Why do we need to know her parentage? There was nothing wrong with Rian Johnson's interpretation. Maybe she just came... Hell, her presence as a virgin in the Force, maybe like Anakin, who just was kind of, like, born. Maybe that's why her parents left her on a planet, because they didn't want her. More to the point, Palpatine, by the time this movie comes out, has got to be, like, 80, at least. The last time we saw the guy, he would have been probably in his 60s, if we're going off of Ian McDiarmid's age.
I mean, he was, like, being kept alive by that weird machine or whatever.
I know.
Although, when he was healed a bit, he still looked super old and gross.
Well, part of that was because... Yeah, because Anakin melted his face off with his own light. I don't know.
Sure.
Just so many things. Going by Ian McDiarmid's age, he was in his 40s when he did his first appearance in the original trilogy, which takes place after the second trilogy. He was in his 60s during the prequel trilogy. So let's say that Emperor Palpatine, assuming he ages like a normal human, or whatever species he is, would live more or less a regular lifespan, was probably, past what generally is considered baby-making age. Obviously, I can't, the timeline just doesn't... Her parents couldn't have been more than, like, in their mid-30s by the time they were killed, based on what we're looking at there.
Mm-hmm.
Rey is probably in her mid-20s at the oldest. I got the impression that she was supposed to be in the late teen, like Luke was in the first movie.
I was thinking early
So probably
20s.
early 20s. Daisy Ridley herself was probably, I think, 26, 27. So did someone look at Monster Mash and say, yeah, give me some Strange, I want a piece of that? I mean, we've all seen the guy's face. There's no way it happened before the Mace Windu fight. So, the most logical explanation is either lack of consent, or equally lack of consent, manipulating the midichlorians to create life, just like the tragedy of Darth Plagueis, and apparently confirmed in the comics. Palpatine did that to create Anakin. I don't know how he knew Shmi Skywalker, or why he wanted so badly for her to be the mother of his child, but he made Anakin, which also means that Rey and Ben Solo are related, in a sense. They're first cousins, once removed, I believe, is what I figured out. Why does everyone need to be related? Why did... Palpatine is already pure evil. I get that they were trying to be like, oh, you're past, you're not defined by your blood, and you're a good person deep down inside. But that's exactly how we got Darth Vader in the first place. Anakin was a decent kid who had some problems, and everyone was like, nah, you'll be fine. And then he wasn't. Rey here blows up a ship that she believes one of her best friends is on. And nobody bats an eyelash. They're just like, hey, it's not your fault. Lightning. Oh, and also, and then they find out that she's the most evil person in the galaxy's granddaughter. And they're just like, no, Rey, you'll be okay.
Did anyone but Finn
That's exactly what Luke was worried about with Ben in the last movie.
But Finn's the only one she told, and he didn't tell anybody. Did anyone else, technically? I mean, and
Luke and Leia knew.
Well, besides them, I mean, like...
Those are the ones I'm talking about.
Oh.
Well, even in the final battle, Luke could have been talking about it out his ass, just be like, just don't turn. But it's still the fact that no one was like...
But if anyone's going to give her the benefit of the doubt, like, to become good at it, it'll be them. But I mean, like, as far as the rest of, like, the friend group knew or whatever, I'm sure if Poe knew, he'd be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. He didn't seem to care that she murdered Chewie with lightning.
Well, he didn't know she was granddaughter at that point, because I'm sure that would have changed a little bit, but...
I was talking more about his lack of concern for Chewie.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, that's
He should have been like, she's dangerous. We need to at least keep an eye on her. Or, I don't know, send her off on her own ship and we'll follow from a distance.
Just in case.
Oh, the point is, it's stupid. There's no reason it need to be that way, and I'm never going to forgive them.
Yep.
Something happy. Let's talk about something. Talk about something happy.
The last thing I had that wasn't addressed in any way in my notes, and it wasn't addressed in the film at the end, was back when they were on that planet and they fell through the sand and they were trying to find the dagger and stuff.
Is it that the water level of the sand wasn't decreasing, even though it was clearly flowing into the below?
That too, but as they were like sinking, Finn was like, "Wait, Rey, I have to tell you," and then I wrote down, I was like,
I never got a chance to tell you.
I hope, and it said it once, and then it didn't happen again. And
never came up.
Poe was like,
actually, no. Someone was like, "What were you going to tell her?" And he's like, we'll talk about we'll talk about it later," and then they never did.
But I wrote down, like, I hope it's not like I've been in love with you the whole time, and I hope, like, I wanted it to be just something stupid that was like, oh, Finn,
maybe he was telling the truth. I don't remember what he said to like get Poe off his back, but maybe it was something mundane, and maybe that was actually what he was going to tell.
I was hoping it was, and I wanted them to say it like, oh, hey, remember that thing?
Well, speaking of...
We needed to pick up something from the store.
Speaking of Finn's love life, and Rey's love life, and Poe's apparent love life, because they all had to have one by the end, and just shove them in.
Poe was just like...
No, I know, but it felt very clumsy. There was no... It's like, hey, here's this new character that they have a history, and he's like, eh? And she's like, nah. And he's like, okay.
I didn't think it was... I thought it was funny because they had that history, even though we didn't know.
Well, and then Finn... I don't know if it was like romantic love, but he was clearly very devoted to Rey. She was like the first person that was ever nice to him. And then in the last movie, they were sort of building up his relationship with Rose. And then Rose was barely in this movie at all. And then in this movie, suddenly there's a third one. Even after it seemed like Finn was going to tell Rey that he loved her. And then, and this is by far
with the horse chick?
Yes, with the horse chick.
I didn't think that was...
They're clearly seeing a future together, even if it's not romantic.
Yeah.
It's sort of a 2019 analog for...
In their spin-off, they'll be together.
I'm saying it looks like they're setting up for something more than just like, hey, we know each other.
Ex-Stormtrooper Club.
And along the same vein, I'm going to cover the third act as quickly as I possibly can. I'm just going to read right off the script here. Okay, so we're getting into not really a script, just what I wrote for my notes. Okay, getting into the third act, Kylo Ben is standing on a moon of Endor, but seems to have turned after sensing his mother's death and having the talk with Ghost Dad. Rey, who stranded her counterpart on a moon of Endor so she could go back to Luke's island, and also have a talk with the adoptive Ghost Dad, and now has Leia's saber, which is a thing, apparently. Because, again, before this movie, we had no idea that she had actually trained as a Jedi. Obviously Force-sensitive. But Hux is unceremoniously dead, because apparently he was the spy in this movie only. Because when we first found that out, I was like, what? And then he was like, no. I've just been feeding you information recently because I want you to take down Ren. And they just murder him. Whatever. Resistance is now off to Popsicle or whatever for the final battle. I've already been asked to accept that Palpatine is just, still around. He was in the Death Star when it exploded. I'm just going to remind everyone of that.
We can see him die.
And even that he has hundreds of Star Destroyers. Sure, maybe he put them there beforehand. Whatever. But where are all the crew and the equipment coming from?
Maybe he cloned them like he cloned Snooks.
What have they been doing all this time?
Just hanging.
Was it General Pride? The only other new named character who was just like, hey, I exist and I'm a bad guy.
I don't know, there was a moment where
who he clearly knew, he was clearly working for Palpatine, like we find that out later. And we know that so maybe he's been recruiting this whole time, but it seems like a lot of people. And a lot of uniforms and stuff, and it's just like, what? It'd be cooler if it was like run by like a ghost crew.
Yeah.
Sith ghosts or something, but nope, we have these fancy red uniforms, and we've been here working for Palpatine this whole time, and nobody ever knew. Of course, nobody knew where Exegol was. Again, the movie asks a lot from its audience in terms of just accepting things.
I think it asks more of people who know about it more, because those things didn't bother me as much.
Maybe it's just because I expect it to be, because who hasn't seen Star Wars? Everyone at least has seen Star Wars. They know Star Wars.
Oh, well, I mean, I've seen it.
I get what you're saying. You're right.
Yeah. But
because yes, out of the context of all the other movies and everything we know, that's not that weird. He has an army. Okay.
Yeah. Pride or whatever that dude is.
With a Y.
Is he new from like this?
Oh yeah, no, we've never seen him before.
Oh, there was a moment where he said something like it was a big reveal, and like people in the audience were like, "Oh," and I was like, I don't know why they were.
And like I said, I just rewatched those movies, and then the thing that I hated the absolute most, even more than
the absolute most,
Palpatine,
yes,
being Rey's grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Just why wasn't he just her great grandfather? That would have at least alleviated some of my questions. That fucking kiss.
Yeah.
Like, it was sort of like the way it was shot, I was like, it's gonna happen. Oh god, it's gonna happen. And then I was like, oh, it's not gonna happen. And then it happens. After Kylo brings Rey back to life with the Force healing, and she wakes up, and they like look at each other, and they like share a moment, and then they kiss, and then Ben dies.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, there's a part of me that was still a little bit happy to see that the people in this universe have actual like passion and feelings and stuff like that, because in the original trilogy there was real. It was like there was like a romance between Han and Leia, and like they were interested in each other, and they flirted and they fought and then in the prequels there was no chemistry between the two people that were supposed to be the romantic leads. And then in this one, because it's 2019, or it just society has changed a lot, they sort of played it safe in terms of things like that. I mean, even in like the first movie, Rey kisses Finn on the forehead before she leaves to go see Luke, and then there's nothing in the second movie that's particularly romantic. I think, does Rose kiss Finn at the end? Okay, I thought so. That one felt a little bit more natural. These two, they clearly shared a deep connection, and it never felt romantic or sexual in any way, and them kissing just kind of made it feel, because it was a kiss on the lips too. It wasn't like a you're my sister, like a sister kiss or something like that. It was like a romantic kiss, and it cheapened the whole thing. It
was kind of the fan servicey thing, because there were a few people in the audience who were like, "Oh my god!"
Like, but the connection was so deep, it cheapened the connection by making it about something other than just like we've been through so much together. They could have just like held each other while Ben died. And it just, oh god, it made me sick. Such a bad decision.
I mean, I saw it coming through though too, so I was like, whatever.
Just because I saw it coming doesn't mean I wanted it to happen.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, I'm gonna die eventually too.
It's that sort of like, the kind of fan service thing too, like, oh, it's the end. Yeah. Why not?
Should we end on a high note?
Yes, we should. I think I almost wrote exactly the same thing you did too. Chewie finally got his medal.
The exact same medal that he should have gotten 40 years ago, in the first movie, at the end.
This is for you.
Because he got totally snubbed. And he didn't just get it, Leia left it for him after she died.
Mm-hmm.
It was clearly fan service, but it felt nice.
It was very nice.
Fan service comes in many shapes and sizes, and some of them are bad and should not be done, and some of them are beautiful and kind of should.
Yes,
even if it's 40 years late.
A total Star Wars novice was like, oh, he got it. So that's how you know it's a good one.
So, Cady.
Yeah.
Would you recommend Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, The Rise of Skywalker? Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker?
Sorry, what?
Cady, would you recommend that movie?
I mean, if you want to see the final installment of it, sure. You don't need to see it. I literally wouldn't have if we weren't doing this, because I don't care. It was fine. It was a good movie. It was fun. I enjoyed it for the most part. So I mean, if you want to see a good movie, and again, if you want to see a movie to cap off the whole
Yeah.
series, then yes. If yeah, sure. Hey, James,
Yeah.
would you recommend?
I know I usually am not above saying no unless.
Mm.
In this case, it's yes for all the same reasons. But it's even the Marvel movies are relatively... This one's just been around forever. If you really don't care about Star Wars, nah, you can skip it.
Yeah,
But Star Wars, even casual observers, it's just been around so long. Like, it's in the zeitgeist. It's gonna be part of the social... This movie is gonna be talked about. Just see it. It's not without its merit. Don't get me wrong. Like, at the very least, like I said, I was never bored.
Mm.
You know, it's an exciting enough movie, and they do a lot of stuff, and I didn't necessarily like all of it, but they tried some stuff and things like that. So, yes, I would recommend it, but not necessarily happily. It's tricky. Go see it. Yes, you should see it for your own sake. Maybe you'll like it more than I did, and that's okay. So, yeah, those are our thoughts. If you agree or you disagree, or you just want to tell me to go die in a fire or something, or tell Cady how wonderful she is, feel free to let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends about this video. Follow us on all social media. Check out our Patreon if you wanna help us make more videos like this. We will probably be back soon. At the very least, we have those grab bag DVDs to get to. So until we see you next, happy Life Day and holidays in general.
Candle nights.
What she said. We have been Cady and Cady of Under 655 Studios. 655! And we'll see you soon.
So, I know I've been drinking coffee this whole time, but what have you been drinking?
No. It's a Qui-Gon Jinn. And tonic. Ah!